you for coming.
Well, thanks again for TI for having us and having this conversation. I think everybody's enjoying it. And again, to echo that not everybody's in the same place, with yourself or even with your companies, and to just sort of respect wherever you're at, I think is something to celebrate, because I think there's a time and place for everything. But it was the time and place for Salesforce this past year and a half. So my name's Sue Warnke. I am the Senior Director of Content Experience at Salesforce, which is like documentation, basically. And if you know Salesforce, how many of you use Salesforce? Okay, so a few of you all know. Customer relationship management. Very successful company right now. They win a lot of, best place to work, most innovative company, things like that. So it's a real honor to be there. I live just south of San Francisco with my 3 teenagers and my wonderful husband. And about 2 years ago, I converted to Christianity after a lifetime as a very proud agnostic. So it's a story there. You might be wondering, which is on YouTube. I've shared my testimony there. But suddenly, I was a different person showing up at work. And faith, for the first time in my life, was important. And it wasn't just important, it was the most important thing in my entire life. And suddenly, I felt very alone in the workplace. And I looked around and I thought, I wonder if I'm the only Christian in this entire company. San Francisco, as you might know, is the second least religious city in the United States of America. That's out of over 19,000 cities. So that was the environment I am, and I made all sorts of assumptions based on that, the little data that I had, that everybody, was going to think I was a freak or, was going to be against me. But I took the step of researching, and I looked online, and I found that there were a couple other Christians, and we started to pray. And I thought, that's not enough. And I kept seeking. And I found that people of all faiths were actually feeling a little bit alone there. And I even found that a couple trailblazers had started the process with our leaders to form this group called Faithforce. And I was annoying enough that they let me kind of join in on there. I wouldn't leave them alone. Can I help? Can I help? With this process. And so about a year and a half ago, we launched officially Faithforce. And, leaders were nervous about this for quite a while. All of the fear that people have been talking about today. Would this work? Will this cause problems? What if it offends somebody? And so the way that they implemented this was very wise. And it's probably similar to how other successful implementations have gone. Number one is we were very clear about what we are not. What we are not. And when I explain it to people, I always start with that. We are not proselytizing. This isn't about changing your belief. It's simply about allowing faith to enter the diversity discussion. When we say, bring your whole authentic self to work, what if faith is your number one identifier? Can you bring your full authentic self to work? That's all that this is about. And I actually want to learn about other faiths in the process. So it's not pushing or trying to change somebody. It's just, can I be seen? Just like you're seen. So that was one. And number two is it's not political. This is not a front for some political agenda. And we make that clear when we have events. So that was the big part. And what it is, it's kind of 3 pillars. It's philanthropy first. All faiths agree on the need for compassion for those in need. And there's a lot of need in San Francisco and all around the world. And we give primarily to homeless causes, but all sorts of things, thousands of employee hours, millions of employee donations and company matches in dollars around the world for faith-based institutions. So we started this group, and man, did it take off. So started with just a handful of us, 5 of us kind of planning this thing. We had our kickoff event, there were about 100 people. And then we had more kickoffs around the world, 300, 500, 1,000. A year and a half later, it's almost 1,900 members across 5 continents around the globe. It is by far the fastest growing employee resource group in Salesforce history. What was that all about? Well, there's a pent-up demand for people of all faiths, and even no faith. Atheists are joining in and saying, I feel alone too. I feel misjudged. And so we kind of invited everybody along, and it's just been this incredible experience. So philanthropy is a big part of it. celebration, we have these huge events, Diwali and Eid, which will be coming up after Ramadan, Easter, Purim. I mean, it's just incredible. And they're not exclusive, right? Of course, they are put on by the multi-faith, by Faithforce. And so that's really honoring to people. And we do just education too. We put out blogs over every event. So today we just launched our Ramadan blog to explain what it is and why people pray. So it's really kind of allowing people to feel seen in the company. And then we also had, this is not something we planned on, but we started having to have vigils for these horrible faith-based attacks because, I mean, we've had employees who lost family members in these attacks around the world. We can't ignore that. This is not a nice to have. This is people's lives. So we had these enormous, thousands of people came all around the world to give their support to all of our Christian Ohana, we call it, family, Muslim family, and so forth, and the Jewish Ohana. And then we started to post about this. We said, let's not be shy about this. Let's talk about it. And we talk about it all over the place on Twitter and LinkedIn. If you follow me, you'll see I'm not very quiet. And other companies in Silicon Valley took note. Some had already started things, but they weren't too vocal about it. But all of the big companies, Apple, Facebook, Google, they either had groups and they expanded them and were inspired by Faithforce, or started new groups. I get pings all the time from people who say, like, I heard about Faithforce and I want to join, or I want our company to do that. And I'll end with just a story, a couple stories. One that I share with the leaders, and we shared, with anybody who wonders, who is skeptical, who says, what is the purpose of this, and isn't it distracting? And I talk about a Muslim employee at Salesforce, and his manager noticed that he was looking tired. And so he just asked him, he said, what's wrong? And the Muslim employee looked down, and he mumbled under his breath, I'm fasting for Ramadan. The manager said something very important. He said, tell me more about that. And the employee looked up, shocked that for the first time in his career, somebody cared. Somebody was curious. And he said, well, I'm fasting for the purpose of gaining compassion for those in need. The manager was fascinated. He didn't know about Ramadan. And he said something even more important, which was, how can I support you? And they came up with a plan to change a couple meeting times for prayer. He said, tell the whole team about this. Teach everybody about Ramadan. And it made this person feel so seen and validated that he now brags about his manager, he brags about Salesforce, he's on Twitter recruiting people to come here. I was at a new hire event, handing out flyers about Faithforce, and a Muslim man came up to me and he said, Sue, you're Sue Warnke, right? He goes, I've been wanting to meet you. He said, I have to tell you that I am here at Salesforce because of Faithforce. He named another big company, I was at X, and I didn't feel allowed to pray. And I heard about Faithforce, and I quit, and I came. So let us not underestimate the business impact. The emotional impact, sure, but the business impact as well, in recruiting, in retention, in morale. Companies all around the world are getting a taste of this, and you really can't not address it anymore. The tide has turned, and we don't want to be at the tail end of that. Let's be trailblazers. Two, I want to underscore how this can contribute to innovation. So Salesforce did not start as a church or ministry app at all. That wasn't even in the founder's vision for this. But it has become one of the top tools for churches and ministries. So the Islamic Relief Fund, who helps orphans all around the world, especially in the Middle East. Salvation Army has 3.4 million volunteers that they use our Salesforce to coordinate and manage disaster relief after, even after Sri Lanka. We have Compassion International and International Mission Board. They use Salesforce to do that. And so this is a new use case that Salesforce didn't plan on, but is a huge market. And so, I think that we can't underestimate that impact either. That, we can not only get talent that is very innovative from other places, but we can use the use case of ministry needs to expand our products.
And we've got to get real here, right? Because it's not going to be useful unless. So I'd just ask you guys what if any, bumps in the road you've had.
Yeah.
concerns?
I can start. So, I mean, there have been some. It's not that there aren't any. It's so few that I have to sort of dig for them, to be honest. But I'll share what they were. I had, right when Faithforce kicked off, I had a Jewish employee email me and say, you know, basically faith has nothing to do with work. What are you doing? The turnaround there is we had, we call them Ohana circles, the vigils, after the Tree of Life. And she was the first one there. And she said, I am so grateful for Faithforce. And, you know, I just didn't see it in this way. I thought of it as an intrusion, but actually now I see it differently. And now she's like one of our top volunteers, which is cool. We had an atheist email me and say, you know, kind of similarly, this doesn't belong here. And I asked if I could meet with her, and we had this like really incredible conversation. And that's where she shared, I feel misjudged too. And I said, well, would you be part of our panel when we kick this off so that you can be a voice for others who feel not included? And she was super honored by it. And so she's kind of like our atheist spokesperson now, and she's really brave to do that. We had one of the first walls that we tackled was the assumption that you kind of mentioned that Faithforce and what our LGBT group called Outforce can't coexist. And this, you know, I think the most destructive assumption that is made out there. So we leaned into that, and we had an event, and we called it Multiple Closets. And we had a Jewish, Muslim, and Christian person who were also gay. And they came and they shared what it was like, just their personal stories of coming out of both closets, both as homosexual as well as a person of faith. And it was simply their story. And what was interesting in that is that many people were on board. Some folks from the LGBT group were not, and they said they've been too hurt in their past to support something like this. And so, you know, we opened a dialogue. We said, tell me more about that. You know, tell me about your story. And one of them got on board and said it was like the most beautiful event he'd ever experienced. One of them didn't, but that's okay. You know, baby steps, right? Baby steps toward this. And it was a super beautiful event. And people, you know, we just saw through that wall. And what I find is that there is a boundary, and we think it's an impenetrable wall. I think it's paper thin. And you can blow it away simply by asking, tell me your story. By saying, I think one of the most important roles in Faithforce is the communications role. You know, we have blog posts going out. We use this tool called Chatter, but it's basically like a Facebook for corporations. And we have posts going out for every major holiday, sort of recapping events, pictures explaining, because there's such a high chance for misunderstanding that, you know, we do a ton of communication to mitigate that. So that's actually one of the biggest reasons why people are open to this, because they can see with their own eyes, they can see quotes from our executives, they can see pictures of our executives, they see what it looks like, not what the policy doc even says, but what's the human face of this, and it's people just like you and me, and they see that.
So did Salesforce have to make a new policy in order to have Faithforce? What happened there?
We have 12 now. At the time we had 9 ERGs. We call them Ohana groups. And so, yeah, it had to go through a formal review process, you know, with all of these elements, with legal and Office of Equality and Diversity. But all of our ERGs are grassroots. They're all started by employees who are passionate about something and who get sort of enough support to rise to that level. So, the story of Faithforce is such a compelling one where, you know, we wondered if we could do this, and it turns out not only can we do this, but it is the most, you know, the fastest growing faith group in history at Salesforce. So that story is so compelling that a lot of our leaders just naturally share it when they are speaking at conferences or when we're recruiting, or it's on YouTube. You know, this is kind of the story that seems to be naturally rising to the surface. So that may not be a direct recruitment effort, but it's certainly leading to recruitment, because people are finding those and seeing them, the people that are seeking them out. I do know that when we have, you know, our summer interns come on and we do training for them, and all of the ERGs get up and explain what they do, the number one question that these millennials ask is there a Faithforce near me? So above every other thing that they could be wondering about, it's to kind of all of our surprise that this is the number one thing that they're wondering about. young people at this stage expect that you will be able to have your faith and have it be seen in the workplace. So it definitely behooves all leaders who have an opportunity to speak to potential recruits to not be afraid to mention that aspect of it. But I don't know if it's an official part of our recruitment process. It's much more organic than that. It's just simply the story that is rising naturally.